When I was 11, I read the book Phoenix Rising by Karen Hesse. The book tells the story of a region afflicted by nuclear disaster in form of a power plant meltdown. I read as Niall, a 13-year-old girl, and her grandmother struggled daily to care for a young boy affected by radiation poisoning. This was a place where everyone wore masks and had to have their food and belongings checked for radiation daily. The Indian Point nuclear facility is located 24 miles outside of Manhattan. If disaster struck the entire population of New York City, 8.4 million people would live the lives of Niall and her grandmother in constant fear that a small dose of radiation could lead to their inevitable deaths.
In terms of nuclear disaster, this was something which was the worst in history up until Fukushima.
When these 50 passengers arrived in Vienna today, they were met not by friends and relatives, but by officials with Geiger counters. They are the first evacuees, dependents of Western workers in the Soviet Union, on a special flight from Minsk. Everyone was immediately tested for possible radiation. Everyone.
It was a long time before people even knew that it would happen. The Russian government didn't actually alert the public that the meltdown was going on. We found out about it because of European sensors found out high levels of radioactivity, and that's when people found out. So unfortunately that meant that there was no attempt to evacuate the area around Chernobyl, and many people died as a result.
In April of 1986, a fire and explosion at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant sent massive waves of radiation through Eastern Europe and several nations surrounding the accident's origin in present-day northern Ukraine. Today, the 20-mile radius around Chernobyl is considered a ghost town, aside from the residents who refuse to leave.
Breaking news here tonight on MSNBC. At the Fukushima nuclear plant, all of the workers have been evacuated within the last hour due to high levels of radiation.
Well, it began with a massive earthquake off the north coast of Japan, which triggered a very powerful tsunami that hit the shores of Japan and devastated coastal areas. And within a day of this happening, word started trickling out that there was a problem at one of the Japanese nuclear reactors. Of course, tens of thousands of people died just because of the tsunami alone, so it was already a tragedy that Japan was hit with. But gradually, as people learned more and more about what was going on with this nuclear facility, that became the headline story.
The media exploded with constant updates of the now hazardous area surrounding the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. The eyes and ears of the world were on the reaction of Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihiko Noda, especially after knowledge of the nuclear plant's vulnerability to disaster became public. The nuclear facility had never been prepared for such extreme circumstances. More controversy arose when it became known that the United States government had advised all American citizens in Japan to evacuate 50 miles outside of Fukushima, 40 miles more than what the Japanese government claimed was safe, and 32 miles more than the set evacuation zone for Indian Point. Of course, radiation does not stop spreading at any defined location. Indian Point is located in a small town in lower New York called Buchanan. Though the town is small, the effects of a nuclear disaster could reach into at least 4 states. If we take the advice of the US government from Fukushima, The danger zone surrounding Indian Point is astounding compared to the recommended 10-mile evacuation zone. The shocking radius of the zone for most immediate deaths is 18 miles, 6 miles away from Manhattan.
Even for people who are willing to still go along with the concept that nuclear power might be maybe not the greatest, but a necessary part of our power solution, will agree that having Indian Point 25 miles north of the country's most densely populated city is a really bad idea.
So the first question I'll ask is, where did you live in relation to Indian Point?
I lived about 2 to 3 miles away from Indian Point.
Did you have worries about where your location was in relation to Indian Point?
Yes, I definitely did worry about it, being so close.
If you needed to evacuate, did you have any plans? Did you know how to or where to go?
There was an evacuation route to take, but I always felt that being so close, it was almost not necessary because you were just too close to make it out.
Where was the route to go if you had to evacuate?
It was, I believe, to take Route 9 south.
South, like towards the city?
Yes. I have a feeling that it's because really there was no escaping it if something major was to happen.
As Indian Point sets to renew its lease after 40 years, its safety reflects its age. According to Entergy, Indian Point's owner, the risk for any severe accident is small. As a result, they have not prepared Indian Point for any severe disaster. Their new lease requires them to plan. But what will they plan for if they believe the threat is small? In an area where Buchanan is set, what disasters are even possible?
In terms of earthquakes, that's actually a very real concern, because there's two fault lines that Indian Point lies above. And in fact, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which is the United States government agency that regulates nuclear power plants, has identified Indian Point as being the #1 most at risk of core damage from an earthquake anywhere in the country. You know, people think of California when they think of earthquakes. They don't think of Westchester County. So we don't have a whole lot of confidence in the NRC to be implementing these changes. And so we have an opportunity here, because Governor Andrew Cuomo has publicly called for the closure of Indian Point.
There are 10 miles to evacuate, 18 miles for peak fatalities, and 50 miles affected for radiation. What can you do? Call those who can shut down the facility, the people you elect to secure at least one natural right, life. Not only your New York State Assemblymen and Senators, but your national senators and representatives. Find their numbers online. But what about the power that will be lost by shutting down the facility? The supposed 1/3 of New York City's electricity that Indian Point generates.
What a lot of people don't know is there have been many times where both of those reactors have been shut down at the same time because of routine maintenance or because they've identified some problem they need to fix. And there has not been any problem with powering up New York City. There's not been blackouts, there have not been brownouts. We have more than enough power right now to shut those plants down. Looking into the future, we need to do more to ensure that we have replacement power in place. And we want to see offshore wind, we want to see more solar panel development, we want more energy efficiency in buildings. These are all the solutions that we need to get working on now, but there's no reason why we can't shut down Indian Point and continue to enjoy the lifestyle that we currently have.